What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of my HLTV Fantasy. Today we are looking at EPL Season 18 Group D. This was my lineup for the last group. Honestly, it's pretty annoying again. I don't know. I predicted that Navi would win correctly. I guess my biggest downfall was just predicting that FaZe would not be that great here. In the end, they weren't all that great. Are there actually games to be played still today? That I think of it? No, not even like super lower bracket. Yeah, because those were already played. But yeah, oh yeah, and FaZe just directly qualified from upper side. That's what I was misthinking. But yeah, honestly, the problem pieces were just these Fnatic and Apex players who didn't perform up to par. Imma didn't have the greatest. I mean, he didn't do too poorly. Not too mad with picking Imma, but just Bit was a lot better. If you look at the best lineup, something like this. So double FaZe, double Navi, and Phelps was the kind of the cheap player who ended up performing this time. It's unfortunate that the players I picked didn't do too well. It's starting to look like a dud season, honestly, like a really bad one. 1 point only. It's unfortunate. I really thought that Fnatic had a chance at beating FaZe, and I felt like even if they don't beat FaZe, they can make the lower bracket run, which they did in the end. Right, like Fnatic did in the end make the run through the lower bracket, but the problem is that their ratings just weren't up there with the FaZes and Navis. For example, I think in the last map, everyone had around, even though they won the series, even the highest rated players had like 1.0 rating, which doesn't do well for HLTV Fantasy at all. But yeah, on to the next one. I'll show you some of the other lineups. Here, Mouse actually lost. Mouse lost 2 best of ones, and I went high on Mouse. I also went for Preezy players because I just felt like there was maybe something there. In the end, Jerppa, so second highest scorer, so probably a Jerppa lineup it was best, right? I would assume. Actually, not even. Yeah, I remember Joelva had like a 1.5 or something rating for the event, which is insane. Actually, Frozen was in the highest rated team, which is hilarious, but it's literally just because he had like some of the weird overperformers here. This one went pretty okay. I just didn't even probably put all the boosters on that I should have. I didn't really follow it that much. There are too many events where they just play too many games in a day, and then I don't have time to put on all the boosters all the time, even though I got pretty decent booster points in the end as well. But I guess something other than this guy was the best lineup, just because those players didn't do quite as well. Not that far away from being a decent lineup. This is still going on, but nothing really possible anymore because I think Ponti got eliminated. And then this one is actually just about to start. We can check Row Demka, Ponti. First map is going on and they are in the lead. Bro having, well, it's not that bad for anyone. Let's just keep an eye on that one, I suppose. And then I went for Double Nation. They've had a pretty good start, and then Branson, who did really well in that one event where is doing really well in that one event where I had double Monty as well. I picked him here as well, and I think he's gonna do pretty well for under 200k. Let's get into the meat of the video though. This is the group. Initial thoughts, C9 should win this side of the bracket, and G2 should win this side of the bracket. The easiest matchups where teams can farm the most points are also C9 against Eternal Fire, and then G2 versus Lin Vision. Other matches, so Complexity 9 is probably the toughest one to predict out of these, or it's actually definitely the hardest one to predict. I don't really know who I would go for here. Probably 9, because they actually did pretty well in their last event. I'm just scared of them kind of messing it up on LAN again. But we haven't seen enough of them online and on LAN to make a real judgment on whether or not they're LAN team or not. Complexity also has some interesting options though. And then Liquid VP. Liquid was kind of a sleeper pick for me before this news came that Daps will fill in for Patsy for a couple of games at least. So VP should definitely win this. I'm just a bit afraid of going for VP players because they're going against G2. And then if they win here, they lose here. In the lower bracket, actually, they are seated on this other side where they will play against Eternal Fire, Complexity, or 9. And most likely it's going to be Complexity or 9, whoever beats EF then. So it's not like easy matchups at all for VP. I don't think they're gonna absolutely farm, but I definitely am considering going for a 1x VP player if I don't go for any of the cheaper Complexity or 9 players. Pricing wise, I'll go over like the most interesting assets to me. So I wouldn't go for anyone from Lin Vision unless you have been watching them in some events and think, for example, that this player is very good. I don't know. I haven't watched these players ever. Eternal Fire I would avoid just because they have C9 first matchup. They have Liquid or Complexity. I mean 9 or Complexity second match. Most likely. And then I don't know. They are just more online team for this tier 2 scene, and they don't usually do this as well in this tier. If I was to go for someone, maybe Major, maybe Voxic. I don't know about anyone else. At least Voxic is kind of land proven, and Xantares is probably a bit overpriced, even at his ratings. From Complexity, the main person I'm considering, or main player I'm considering, is JT, just because he's super cheap. He's actually kind of capable as a fragger. So the main question, I'm gonna reveal it now, for me is between Minio and JT, because I just want to get those expensive players from G2 and C9. Minio and JT are kind of the budget enablers who I could see myself going for. Most likely, I think Minio will win against Complexity. I don't know. It's gonna be tough to choose either way. It might be a JT event. Also because, like, if we expect Complexity to lose against 9, at least Complexity have an Eternal Fire matchup that should on paper be a bit easier. Yeah, from Complexity or 9, I wouldn't probably go for anyone else, unless budget enables you to go for like a goofier Kylar, maybe Hades, even, like obviously the kind of linchpin of this 9 squad. I wouldn't go for Elise, for example, at all. For Liquid, I would completely avoid them. I was thinking of going like double Liquid, double G2, and then I would have G2 players, and if VP beats Liquid, at least Liquid get to kind of farm points with Lin Vision. But now with Daps coming in for Patsy, I think it's just a complete avoid. At least it makes my choice a bit easier. And then VP became better with Liquid becoming worse, of course, because we expect them to kind of dominate this matchup, more or less. I think players I've been pretty impressed by lately are especially Fame. I think he's become this like secondary star, where I thought Flit would probably be that, or even MIR when he came in. For me, I still would probably rather go for these super cheap players from 9 and Complexity, just to get some of the more expensive players from C9 and G2. But I think there's at least chance of going for these players. At least you could go for them. Probably would stray away from Mir because he hasn't played on the land too much, whereas these other players are more land proven. Then Cloud9 and G2. Huxi is an obvious pick to some extent. If you didn't actually see, go to the main page. They've been posting these kind of articles where they sometimes tell you for players what kind of price adjustments they have made. So for example, Huxi would be actually 165k if he was priced based purely off of some kind of formula that they use to price players. But he's been put up by 110 grand, which is a good decision because obviously, like, he's the most picked player. this is not surprising to anyone who plays fantasy. I would say you go for, or it's very common to go for this super budget enabler from one of the better teams. Just generally, worse players from good teams do quite well usually in fantasy and are quite heavily picked. But you should keep an eye out for these articles, even if you don't read too much of the other articles on HLTV. Then another one is like Nico going down to 232. So I definitely would consider him at this price point, where I wouldn't have gone for him ever really for 248k, like just too expensive, that price. Other than that, I would say from C9, I could see myself picking any of them, depending on how the money works. Like, I would say Perfecto has been the best player for C9, pretty much. He was the highest rated in their last event, and he has been really highly rated in the last ones as well. Exile had a good event, Shiro has been decent, and we know what his ceiling is like. I could still see myself going for Electronic if the price matches, and Hobbit is probably the one I would be least likely to go for, but if I don't have the money for Perfecto, I don't feel horrible going for Hobbit, definitely, right? He's definitely a player you could go for and be quite happy with. From G2, my eyes are mostly on Nico, Huxi, and m0NESY at these prices. I don't think JKS, especially with how passive he is, like he's the potential of getting into those 3v3s or other kind of after the first few blows have been dealt and getting kills is slower because people like Nico, Huxi, m0NESY are probably there to get those first frags more often than against better opponents. At least that's my kind of philosophy when picking a fantasy lineup, is to not always avoid these passive players. Like a JKS in playoffs sounds like a better deal, or if we know that if he had a G2 added more difficult first game, I would be eyeing up JKS at this price point, but I'm just afraid of him not getting a lot of frags against Envision. But yeah, Nico, m0NESY, Huxi are the ones I'm looking at the most. Biggest decision, I think Huxi almost always makes it into my lineup, and double C9 makes it. It becomes a decision between Nico and m0NESY, because you can actually make a very decent team with Huxi and Nico. You can get either Minio or JT, and you can even upgrade Electronic into Hobbit. You'll get Minio if you want. Whereas with m0NESY, you probably, like price-wise, this just doesn't make sense. There's no players at or around this price point to really go for. So you probably have to go for Shiro here then, and then again you're in this similar situation where you can go for any of these 2 or even 3 budget enablers. I think, personally, I would like to go for a Nico lineup here. We have seen Nico really pop off in the last few events. Like, he's been quite insane lately and very consistent. Whereas m0NESY would be this risky option, riskier option at least, where he's had a couple of events here. But apart from that, we're still looking at a very, very capable Oper. Essentially, it's then, do you go for Huxi, m0NESY, Perfecto, Axile, and one of these guys, or do you go for, instead of Perfecto Axile, you can go for Nico and then Hobbit, Shiro. I mean, Hobbit Axile. We had Shiro money anyways in the last one. But yeah. If you go Nico, you go for Axile and Hobbit. Most likely. Or Axile and Perfecto. If you look at the most picked players, wrong tab, Nico doesn't even make the top 8. You have Electronic, Perfecto, Shiro. Then we have JKS, Minio, Norbert. I am kind of eyeing up a potential JT. I think JT, to me, has higher potential upside, I would say. I just have never been convinced by Minio. Like, he never really has even... he rarely has those pop-off events, right? Whereas Huxi, whereas I mean JT at least against tier 2 still frags, and I think he might be put into fragging positions more often. Also he has pretty good support run percentage. Either way, I think this is my lineup. Because I want to go for Nico at this price. I would love to have m0NESY Nico, but that's impossible. Electronic I still have quite high on faith in. Exile can definitely frag. I would probably go for Minio if it meant I could go for Perfecto over Electronic, but I think in this case I would go for this. It allows me to get in Nico, and I'm pretty happy about that. I just really, I'm putting a lot of eggs into this basket. Now I'm kind of second guessing myself again. Should I just go for a kind of safer lineup? The safe lineup, of course, would include, the safest lineup, by the way, would be Huxi, m0NESY, Electronic, Perfecto, and Norbert. But I could go for like a Huxi, m0NESY, Electronic, Huxi, m0NESY, Perfecto, Shiro, Minio, and that would be it. Having only players from here, but I want to take the kind of punt on JT. I think Nico is underpicked at this price point. Exile is underpicked as well, to some extent. We don't have an Opper, but let's go for the roles. We know we expect Huxi and G2 to go at least 4-0, honestly. Like, I'd be disappointed if they go 2-1 only here even. They should 2-0 this every time. 2-1, at least win here. And most likely win here as well. I'll go for that later. I believe Entry has higher, like, yeah, Entry has actually got higher percentages than Multifragger, but I'm just afraid of Entry kind of getting scuffed by the fact that he's playing in a very, very easy matchup. So I'll actually probably go Multifragger here. Electronic Entry is probably the way to go then. Yeah, I think that's less likely to get scuffed by that. That's kind of weird about roles that I've been thinking about quite a bit, is that how much the opponent in a couple of games matters in comparison to these percentages here. These percentages should be like the most important thing, I would say. They give you a lot of data in a small package about how well they're going to perform in each role. But sometimes against these lower tier opponents, these very small changes can make a huge difference. Let's put it that way. I think Exile most likely is going to be CT rating. Actually, T rating is better on him. I don't understand how. I don't get this at all, honestly, either way. But if T rating is, this probably actually calculates like the recent events, whereas this one is like before the most recent event. So I'll probably trust those percentages more in this case. Support, I know Stat Hunter actually not that bad for him as well. Probably T rating is pretty safe. And then here I saw support round is pretty good. Headshot is way safer at least. Noob, yeah, but I wouldn't go noob here. I don't really want to go noob because I can definitely see a world where he like outfrags 9 players or gets the loss here but doesn't really do that poorly. I don't know. It's a bit of a risk, of course, to not go for something else, but he's got a decently high headshot percentage, so again, this could be impacted by like the tier of opponents that he's playing against. Let's say top 20. His headshots, actually his headshots go up. Okay, his rating goes down by a considerable margin, and I know it's a risk, but he's very cheap. I hope the headshots come through for him. And also I don't think Minio or any of the other cheaper options look that much better. Okay, then boosters. I think this has to be Feeling 22. A lot of these are going to be best on Nico. Also, that should be triggering here. Those are some of my Yeah, best pistol. Axile is also a great pistol player, so we can use that there. It's gonna be a lot of Nico and Axile sharing these boosters, these better boosters. Actually, Avenger better on Electronic, but we're probably saving it for later. Flash assist JT, that makes a lot of sense. Then here, nade kill, probably gonna be a Hooksy booster eventually. Headshots probably on JT eventually. A lot of these rows are actually quite good and kind of spreading around nicely, I would say. Probably Avenger versus versus Eternal Fire. And I think that's the lineup. Yeah, I don't know, like standings wise, we are very deep in the this is actually wrong standings tab, but in the standings we are super deep. 666 start with the rank, of course. If it couldn't get more cursed, I mean, can't get more cursed than that. It's probably kind of GG for these top ranks. So I think I'm going closer to going for those top three like price finishes in any of these events even. I wish it went better. Hopefully next season it's gonna go better. I've taken some gambles in situations where it didn't pay off. I've taken the safe route in situations where it didn't pay off, and I could make some kind of season recap once all the events for the season are done. If you're interested in something like that, where I kind of go over my thoughts, I think I can probably remember what I've been thinking in any event and what's been the kind of overall CS landscape for any of them. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this kind of video. If you do, leave a like, subscribe to my channel. I post these for every non-partner fantasy, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.